It's time to find out
What Shane
said with Shane Manila.
It's time for another Shane Says. I've been asked a few times, a lot actually, over the years, what do I consider a hammer? And, you know, the term is used a lot. It's thrown around, I think. And the first thing you should know about hammers are they are super elite. There aren't a lot of them. And just to show you how elite and how rare they are, I just decided to go through a couple of the positions, quarterback and wide receiver, and literally list all the hammers and why I think they're hammers, and maybe make a couple comments on players that I don't believe are hammers. So I'm just going to get and dive right into it. Just a couple notes. If I reference any stats from 2023, it is only through 16 games, not 17 games, because the 17th game, not everyone played. And if they did, they didn't play full games, not everyone. And this is based on 4-point passing touchdowns, which does favor rushing quarterbacks. But I will say in general, rushing quarterbacks usually have an edge on non-rushing quarterbacks for obvious reasons. If it's not obvious, because they have additional points from rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. So anywho, these are the quarterback hammers. There's a couple ways you can base this off of, right? Or a couple things you can look at. If you want to look at top scoring quarterbacks by point per game last year, there were only 3 to hit 20 points per game last year. There was Josh Allen with 23.1 points per game. There was Jalen Hurts who had 22.2 points per game, and Lamar Jackson 20.7. This data is actually pulled from Spaceman Wright NFL database. He scrapes this from various places. So again, just 3 quarterbacks: Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson hit 20 points per game last year. And this was not a one-year wonder. These were not quarterbacks that were elite just last year, I should say. If you look, Josh Allen has been the quarterback one in 3 of the last 4 seasons. I would say that is a hammer. Jalen Hurts has been QB6. He was a QB6 in his first rookie season, not his rookie season, but the first season that he started as a quarterback, first season that he started. Then he was the QB1 and the QB2 in subsequent seasons. Even last year, I know he struggled, air quotes, but he was actually the QB2. Lamar Jackson has 5 top 8 seasons. He has 2 top 3 seasons and 5 seasons as a starter. So in his 5 seasons as a starter, each of those seasons, he's been at least top 8. One note about last year, there was another quarterback that hit 20 points per game. That would have been Joseph Flacco. Joseph Flacco will not be considered a hammer. Joseph Flacco did that in 5 games, and Joseph Flacco does not have a job in 2024 because Joseph Flacco is especially old. Joseph Flacco is not a hammer. So my first 3 hammers at quarterback: Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Another way you could look at it is spike weeks, right? If you base it on spike weeks, and what do I consider a spike week? I consider a spike week as 25 points plus in a given week. Last year, there were 59 occasions in which a quarterback hit 25 points or more. And the quarterbacks that led that were Dakota Prescott had 5. Then Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson each had 5. Then Brock Purdy and Josh Allen each had 4. If you notice some correlation or some redundancy there, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, already spoke about those 3. This kind of hammers home. Don't want to use the word hammer homes, but whatever. I'll say hammers home the point that those guys are hammers. It is interesting with Dak and Brock there. So I want to just discuss them a little bit. I don't think Dak Prescott is exactly a hammer. He's only had 2 seasons where he's put up top 4 production out of 7 full seasons that he's played. I'm not counting the 2020 season. He only played 5 games. He was on pace for a QB1 season. Excuse me. He was on pace for a QB1 season, but we don't know what happened in those remaining games. It would have taken, 5 games is a very small sample, 2 bad games, and that could have crashed. So I don't consider Dak Prescott a hammer. And this is my show, so I get to say who's a hammer on this show. But you could consider him a hammer, but I do not. Again, he has not had multiple years of elite production. He's just had 2 out of 7. Brock Purdy. I don't know what to do with Brock Purdy. I'm not going to consider him hammer. Now, based on spike weeks and actually where he finished last year, he was the QB6. You could say that he is a hammer, but I'm going to put a lot of what he did on the back of his offensive scheme and his offensive weaponry. And that might be too critical because, well, that's not his fault that he's in a good offense with a good scheme with good players. But I'm not going to count him, mainly because I think if you take some of that weaponry away, if something were to happen, he would not be able to carry a team. He would not be able to produce on his own, I should say. Well, no one can produce on their own, but he wouldn't be able to produce at an elite level if you take a weapon away from him. Whereas, again, guys like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, I think they would. So right now, again, just 3 hammers. Now, you'll notice I haven't said one dude's name already, and I know you're already thinking of it. Patrick Mahomes. Okay. He only scored 17.5 points last year. Again, only air quotes. Depending on how you look at it, if you don't count players who played 8 or fewer games last year, he finished as a QB 10. If you do count players that played less than 8 games, he was quarterback 14. But he only had 2 games over 25 points. That's last year, right? Long term, we need to note that he's been a QB1 in all 6 of his seasons as a starter, all 6 of them. And this isn't back end QB1 seasons. He's been including 4 top 5. Yeah, he's had 4 top 5 seasons. That's pretty good. So yeah, that dude is just absolutely a hammer. So he's my 4th hammer. So Patrick Mahomes, 4th hammer. I think it's obvious. I think it's just, I just wanted to jump in here. I'm sure someone's going to ask me about CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud had an excellent rookie season, using the same metric that I did with Pat Mahomes. If you count players, quarterbacks that played under 8 or under fewer games, he was either the QB7 or the QB10. Either way, a great rookie season. He had 2 weeks with 25 points or more. I don't consider him a hammer. I could be wrong. I think you'll notice of the players that I consider hammers at the quarterback position, they all have a certain profile to them, a certain mobility to them. They all could either rush for 15 touchdowns or 800 yards if they so choose, or in Patrick Mahomes' case, throw for 50 touchdowns. Maybe CJ Stroud gets there. I'm not willing to put him there yet. So this is probably going to annoy people. I'm putting Kyler Murray as a hammer. You don't like it? I get it. Kyler Murray is very disrespected in the community. Maybe I'm a little higher than I should be, but either way, he's my 5th hammer. He has 2 top 4 seasons and 4 full seasons played, 3 top 7 seasons. That seems elite to me. That seems like a hammer. He's a hammer to me. So I've got 5 right there. That's it. 5 quarterbacks. 5 quarterbacks that I list as hammers. You'll notice I didn't say Justin Herbert. I didn't say Joe Burrow. I think both players are very good. I think both players are excellent, even maybe even elite, but I don't think they're hammers. Again, a hammer is someone that can flip a week completely on their own multiple times in a season. They are very good. Both are, though they have mobility, and I think if they chose to, they could run for a lot of yards. They don't choose to. I think that limits their upside. So those 2 gentlemen are not hammers to me. Another good example of someone that's not a hammer, Trevor Lawrence, and specifically why he's not a hammer is because he's giving you back-end QB1 production. That's not elite. That's good production. That's okay production. I don't want to say it's replaceable because that dismisses it and kind of demeans it, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's good production. It's not great production. He's not elite. He's probably what the perfect, or he's probably trending towards a guy like Kirk Cousins, trending towards that type of career, a guy that has had multiple top 12 seasons, including top 6 seasons, but typically he's a back end QB1. Someone like that is not a hammer. So again, I have, 5 hammer QBs. Let's see. We've got Joshua Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray. That's it. I said it's an exclusive club. Again, I'm looking for guys that put up multiple high-end wide QB1 seasons and or spike weeks. Wide receivers, going to be looking for the same thing, right? I'm looking for players that put up high-end wide receiver 1 seasons or a significant number of spike weeks, 25 points or more. And again, generally, I want younger guys. Every one of these players that I'm about to list have had multiple top 10 or better wide receiver seasons and or have absolutely smashed as rookies. Now, in rare cases, you can bank on a wide receiver that's who's aging out, and keep them in the hammer tier because the production is just so elite. And I started with that caveat because Tyreek Hill, again, only counting the first 16 games last season, my dude was the wide receiver 1. And he led the league in scoring 25 points or more at the wide receiver position 9 times last year. That is even if you count the 17 games played, but it's not. That would be more than half the time he scored more than 25 points. That is the absolute definition of a hammer. I don't know that much more discussion needs to go there. Yes, he only has 2 years, according to what he said. That's a fun discussion for another day. How much do you value the limited years but elite production? I value it highly for whatever it's worth. There's some obvious hammers, at least I think they're obvious. A wide receiver, second hammers, CD Lamb. He was the wide receiver 2 last year, again, through 16 games, not 17. He was second in the league with 7 25-point plus weeks. And every season, he's finished better than the year prior. Last year, again, he finished as the wide receiver 2. The year prior to that, he finished as the wide receiver 7. He just keeps getting better. And 2 top 7 seasons in the last 2 years. Pretty good. Next guy up, and this is not in the order that I ranked them, by the way. This just happens to be the order that I put them on the paper or on the document. No one uses paper anymore, not in 2024. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Same kind of points or same kind of thinking as CD Lamb. He just keeps getting better every year. His targets, receptions, yards, fantasy points, fantasy finish every year gets better. He finished as the wide receiver 4 last year, wide receiver 10 the year prior. He was tied for 5th with a ton of wide receivers, but tied for 5th with 3 games over 25 points last year. So he's my wide receiver. He's another hammer. Obvious ones: Justin Jefferson, 3 top 5 seasons. Every season of his career, he's been a top 9 wide receiver, points per game. Jamar Chase, 2 top 5 wide receiver seasons out of 3 seasons played. Even if you consider last year was being a down season, he was still the wide receiver 11. This is probably where we get a little controversial. Controversy's fun, right? That's how I get the clicks. That's how I get your comments yelling at me, telling me I'm not that bright. But hey, it drives the algorithm. That's fun. AJ Brown. 3 out of the last 4 seasons, he's been a top 8 wide receiver, including the last 2 seasons. The last 2 seasons, he's been a top 8 wide receiver. Back to back, he's been wide receiver 8, actually. Last year, again, he tied with a bunch of other wide receivers with 3 25-point plus games. Next up, Puka Nacua. Yeah, he's a hammer. I got a lot of questions last year if I was ready to put him into the hammer tier, and I was never ready to do it at any point. Season ended, obviously. Time to look back. I just wanted to go back and look at all the wide receivers in the last 20 years that have scored just about around where Puka Nacua scored. Or at least I looked at the highest scoring seasons of rookie wide receivers in the last 20 seasons. Excuse me. You have Jamar Chase, Odell Beckham Jr., Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson, Anquan Bolden. I mean, these are really good lists. So basically, the order goes: it was Odell Beckham Jr., who was an absolute monster with 24 points a game. Then it was Justin Jefferson with 17.67 points per game. Actually, Jamar Chase was second. Either way, it was Odell Beckham, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Anquan Bolden, and then Puka Nacua in the last 20 years. Puka Nacua finished as the wide receiver 6 last year. As I noted, I believe he's the 5th highest scoring rookie wide receiver in the past 20 seasons. That's enough for me to make you a hammer. Again, looking at the list of the players, the 14 players that are on this list of the top scoring rookie wide receivers in the past 20 years, you got Jamar Chase, Odell Beckham Jr., Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson, Anquan Bolden, Michael Evans, Michael Clayton, Michael Thomas, Marquise Colston, Julio Jones, Jalen Waddle, Eddie Royal, Brandon Ayuk, and Tank Dell. Interesting. That's a discussion point for another time. So Puka's on this list. That list is really good. There are not many misses on that list. There is Michael Clayton and there is Eddie Royal. You could say Marquise Colston, I guess, though he had a very productive year. But everyone on that list, outside of those guys, were really, really good. Brandon Ayuk, the story's yet to be written. That's it. That's my hammer list at wide receiver, guys. It's Tyreek Hill, ARSB, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, and Puka Nacua. That's it. There were a couple guys in the top 12 that I wanted to just take note of last year. Keenan Allen, wide receiver 3. He's old, 32 years old, and he joins a roster with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. So he is not going to be in the hammer tier for me. Mike Evans. He actually was 3rd last year with 5 25-point-plus games, but also not a hammer, also old. And he typically finishes as a back-end wide receiver 1. Last year, I believe he was wide receiver 10 or so. So he's not on the list. And then just one prediction. Just going to make one prediction for next year. I'm going to go ahead and add one player to this list that's going to be on there at wide receiver next year. Marvin Harrison. Without a doubt, I think he's going to be on that list. Going backwards, I probably should have mentioned this. Sorry. At quarterback, I think next year, since I already mentioned who's going to be there at wide receiver, only Marvin Harrison is the one I'm willing to add. Sorry, Chris Olave, I love you, but I can't add you. Just Marvin Harrison. At quarterback, I think we're going to be able to add Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams. Yeah, that's where I'm at. So, like I said, just a quick episode. Wanted to just hit you up, let you know who I thought the hammers were. Just at quarterback and wide receiver. I'll circle back around and we'll hit running backs and tight ends. Probably a much shorter episode. Much shorter episode. Matter of fact, I know it'll be a much shorter episode. So that's the list, guys. Again, I'll just go through it just because I know I tend to ramble. And sometimes I'm not the clearest. Sometimes I might, what's the word I'm looking for? Confuse people. At quarterback, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray. At wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, and Puka Nacua. That's it. That's my list of hammers. Hey, let me know who you think I'm wrong about and who you think are hammers. Appreciate you watching the show. Have a great one.